Buenos días a todos, buenas tardes, si es que algunos nos acompañan desde el otro lado del mundo.
Good
Antes de dar
morning
inicio,
to all of you. Before we begin, as usual, we would like to remind you that we have simultaneous interpretation. To change your language, click the icon in the lower right corner. If you experience any translation issues during the webinar, please inform us.
Simultaneous translation in Spanish, English. To change your language, click on the icon in the lower right corner. If you have any inconvenience during the webinar, please let us know so we can adjust any problem that we might have. Previo a continuar y para mantener el
Before
orden de la
proceeding and to maintain order during the session, please keep your microphones muted during the presentation. My name is Maria de Los Angeles Gatica from the FAO Regional Office for Latin America and the Caribbean, and I will be moderating this event. I am grateful for all of those that are here with us. We thank everyone for the capacity building series of webinars on the interests of Latin America and the Caribbean. This series is part of the actions to support implementation of Codex text related to antimicrobial resistance, project funded by the Republic of Korea and implemented by FAO at the world level. Since the beginning of these seminars in 2022, the series has covered a wide range of topics, including guides for the orientation of new participants at Codex Alimentarius, challenges in food safety, the One Health approach, contaminants in fishery and aquaculture products, food fraud, antimicrobial resistance transmitted through food, and the relationship with Codex. Today, the focus of this webinar is the control and monitoring of veterinary drug residues in animal origin food. Now, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Leopoldo Barrio, Food Safety and Quality Officer of FAO, Latin America and the Caribbean. Leopoldo, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Maria Los Angeles. Good morning to all of you. And on behalf of FAO, we would like to share, first of all, a fraternal welcome. This is the 11th and the first one of 2026. And as Maria Los Angeles was saying, it is geared towards the strengthening of capacity building in that which relates to topics of interest to this region. There is no doubt that this is a priority topic, and we would like to bring them to you and to begin the building the baseline for the technical cooperation and work. We know that modern sustainable systems in the area of feed, it requires the information of everything that is presented does not present hazardous aspects to public involvement, and also international trade aligned to Codex. And this is a shared responsibility, without a doubt. FAO has an important responsibility, the primary generation and trade, eventually the definition of these sanitary measures that are effective in records, distribution, and use of veterinary medication and drugs, and the compliance of good practices in antimicrobial and veterinary drugs from the farm. And this is a fundamental point. We need to recognize that these good practices in the use and all the controls and oversight are previous to the slaughtering of animals. It has to be directly related to food safety. All the national programs and monitoring beyond the guaranteeing that food does not have substances above the IMR, the maximum residue volumes. It has to be effective in good practices in the use of medication, and drugs, their controls, and implement corrective measures when needed. the food safety and sanitary processes, which are undivisible. We need to incorporate risk aspects to ensure that we have sampling and the substances of medication in these oversight. The LMR that is carried out by Codex for Veterinarian Products for JIXFA is part of the concept of risk analysis. Without a doubt, another challenge is to broaden our diagnosis at the laboratory and level, analysis, quality control, and the interpretation of data. Now, as far as the resistance of antimicrobial drugs, which comes from the production of food, and we know it has been in the sanitary agenda at the regional level, the residues of antimicrobial aspects are key and many times do not have the visibility and significance of this important threat to health. We have to recall that this has the access to the population at large, creating resistance, but also the residues above LMRs that which can create enormous effects on the microbiota. The residues, therefore, is a tool that is part of these practices of prudent and responsible actions in the ill use of substance and environmental contamination. I don't want to go beyond the period that I've been assigned. I would like to thank the participation of our panelists, which today make this dialogue significant. And thank you all for being part of this journey. I hope we can continue jointly jointly and hand in hand during 2026. Thank you very much, Leopoldo, for those kind words of welcome. During this seminar, we're going to have different topics. We're going to be using a tool that has been developed by FAO, aimed at supporting countries in a more comprehensive manner, the monitoring systems of the MRLs established in the national legislations. We will also be referring to lessons learned, progress, challenges in the design and implementation of control and monitoring programs, and health authorities in two countries in the region. We will also provide time to have a Q&R. We're going to have some questions, so we would like you to answer a few questions at the beginning so you can participate. We would like you to answer the first one. The first one says, in accordance to your knowledge, does your country have a national system for medication at the veterinarian level? Does your country have a national program for official monitoring and control of veterinarian drug residues? Some are partial development, some are not sure, approximately 10%. We will provide you a few more minutes. Let's see if there's a variation in figures. All right, now we have more stable numbers. We're 190 participants, approximately 66%, 70% says the country does have a national program for official monitoring and control of veterinary drug. Some are in development, about 10% indicates they do not have it. So we're going to go to the next question. For those of you that responded yes, please answer the next one. In your country, Do you have export? In your country, does the waste management program mainly focus on export products, products for domestic consumption? Both monitoring is not conducted. I don't know, I'm not sure. Approximately 50% is for both exports and national consumption, which makes us very happy. And then there is a variation, about 50% say both, about 20% only for export products, and the other says for national consumption. And approximately 20% says they do not know. There's no certainty. Okay, very good. Thank you very much for participating in these first rounds of questions. So, without further ado, we're going to begin with the presentations. I'm going to introduce my first panelist.
We will start with Dr. Masami Takeuchi. Dr. Masami is a food safety officer at the Food and Agriculture Organization, providing scientific advice to countries and to the Codex Alimentarius Commission. Her work focuses on risk assessment of foods from evolving production systems, including biotechnology, cell-based foods, precision fermentation, and indoor farming. She advances the use of artificial intelligence and whole genome sequencing to support evidence synthesis, risk analysis, surveillance, and outbreak response. She also integrates food safety into food loss and waste reduction initiatives and leads capacity development through FAO's RBDF tool, strengthening national residue monitoring and analysis system worldwide. So Masami, you have 30 minutes for your presentation. I will let you know when you have 5 minutes left. And the floor is yours. I will share your presentation and you can let me know when to change the slide.
Gracias, Maria. Thank you very much. Buenos dias, everybody. And then I will be speaking in English mainly, and then I apologize. My name is Masami Takeuchi. As Maria kindly introduced me, I am a food safety officer in the division called Agri-Food Systems and Food Safety Division of FAO headquarters in Rome. And I'm usually based in Rome in Italy, but then today that I am connecting from Tokyo, that is my national country. And I am very happy to listen to this poll that Maria just introduced. And then usually when I travel around the world to look at this capacity of the residue monitoring situations, that only a handful number of countries are quite confident in saying that they are conducting regular monitoring, and then vast majority of countries are telling me that they do need lots of help and lots of assistance to technically equip with the capacity to do the monitoring systems. But then it seems like your region, the Latin America, seems to be quite equipped. So I think that this is very positive. And then my presentation is titled From Residues to Resistance, the dual role of antimicrobial residue monitoring. Next, please. So the very first thing that I really have to emphasize is that maybe something that everybody already knows, but then the fact is that we need veterinary drugs. So imagine that the animals are just like human, that they get sick. And then when they get sick, they need medicines. So it's not about use or not to use, but then it's more like how we are going to use it, because they need it, we need it, and then it is effective. And then we just need to understand how we can achieve responsible use. Next slide, please. And the real question is that we shouldn't go too radical to talk about eliminating the residues, because that is not realistic. So we have to think about, yes, we do have to use the medicines. We need vaccine. We need to put some medicine into animals' body, but then how much, and then how often, and then what is the acceptable level that is remaining in the parts that can be used as food. Next slide, please. And then this is the very inconvenient truth, but then in the food safety chemical analysis world, this is the norm that everything can be toxic. And then I'm writing toxic twice here because I just emphasize that it is all about dose. So if you have too much water, you will get water toxicity. If you have too much sugar, you know that the sugar can kill you, but then at the same time, your body needs sugar. If you have too much salt, same story. So it's all about how much, how often, what is the exposure, and then how you manage this dosage. So it's exactly the same for the veterinary medicines, and then also its residues too, that how much do we tolerate? How much is effective and how much is not really okay for us to have as a residue. Next, please. And then this is becoming quite important these years because first of all, of course, that it has been a traditional issue in the world of food safety because there is a public health the threat. It can create some acute toxicity because if you have so much of certain medicines at once, of course, that can be toxic. And that there is a chronic impact. For example, that even though that you are taking a slightly smaller dosage, but then if you continue to be exposed to these drugs, then it's almost like you are taking the medicine yourselves. So there is a certain substantial concerns about food safety, first of all. But then second emerging threat is AMR. So basically that we are talking about antimicrobial use. And then if we use too much or too inappropriately or not managing very well, of course, it will contribute to development of AMR. And then also that there could be a trade implications. Certain jurisdictions have some sort of very strict the restrictions and then also the control to have food with the certain residue levels. So if the national cannot control the residues, that will impact very largely to this trade relations, and then some countries may face the situation of the border rejection. And then also this entire the cycle of the public health and trade, and then also AMR can have a very long run impacts in the end. So we are going to deep dive into this topic. Next slide, please. So I've been repeating this, but then it's not only about how much, but then the important question is how often. Because usually single exposure is not so much of the huge life-threatening impact in food safety and then also AMR. So if one single low-level exposure can happen, but then it doesn't kill somebody all of a sudden, but then it is about, is it every day? Is it once a week? Is it once a year? But then somehow constantly continuing, and then that could be quite concerning. And then also this repeated exposure. So then we are talking more about food safety here, but then also for the AMR issues that we have to think that what kind of the contribution this repeated exposure will create to the human and then also the environment. And then the regional food safety officer just mentioned that this potential AMR relevance, and then also this potential the monitoring potentially effective in managing this AMR development. So this is about how often. And then also the cumulative risk is known in the residue issue. So I think that this entire issue is not about how much at once of the testing, but then rather we have to continuously look into the trend and then also document this whole the cycle and patterns of the use, and then also as a consequence as a residue. And then we need to understand how much is affecting our health and as well as to the environment. Next slide, please. So the question here is that what are antimicrobial residues? So because we talk about residues, and then I usually say that we need to normalize it because the first slide I explained the fact that animals need it. Animals need medicine. So this is something that's a reality, and then we cannot change it. And then we use medicines to animals. But then why residues happen? The very shocking truth that usually people don't realize is that if human manage very well, residues shouldn't be a problem. That is the fact. But then unfortunately, we have some issues. For example, this withdrawal period violation. So if we give medicines to animals, and then if we don't wait enough time, and then we butcher them and then sell it as a meat, of course that the residue level becomes high. But then this happens in many, many different countries. This is the reality because you see that those producers and then also the sellers, they want to sell the meat when they can sell. This is the reality. And then I have seen this situation in many different countries. And then they know that they have given some medicines, but then they don't think enough. And then if next day some buyers come and then want to buy in a big chunk of the amount, then they want to sell it. And then they just cut it off and then just sell it. And then this becomes an issue. So how do we manage this situation? Also, off-label use is often a problem, and then it's veterinary drugs are not managed mainly in many different countries that as a human drug. So it's not too strict, and sometimes that this off-label use happens, and then sometimes even like worse situation, the producers do not know that what medicines they are using, but then somehow there are middle brokers, and then they buy medicines just listening that okay, your animals are not doing well, this will cure them, this will treat them, give it to them, and then that they trust them because of the trusting relationship. And then they give the medicines without knowing exactly what those medicines do. So this is the something sometimes happen. And then also the sometimes it is mixed with the feed, so animal feed, or sometimes aquaculture that the fish feed may have some antibiotics. And then people just give as a part of the feeding practices, and then not really knowing that exactly what kind of medicines are there. So this can be a problem. And then I know deep down that this is bad, but then at the same time, in the reality, in the practice, this happens a lot in many different countries, even very much industrialized situations too. So this is something that human behavior that we need to look at and then try to manage. And then also this overuse, because not everybody is the veterinarians, so not everybody is the doctor. So when there is a medicine, and then we know that this medicine will be effective for the animals, we just want to give as much as we can so that this can be useful. So this situation happens a lot in a very different situations. And then also that there could be some different issues, like some banned antibiotics use, or sometimes like the import without knowing that this has antibiotics in it. So quite lots of different issues in terms of the drug management, feed management, and food safety issues, and then also overall the industry shape. For example, who is allowed to sell, or who is allowed to manage, and then who should be advising about amount or kinds. This is sometimes very blurry, and then this could end up in this situation of the antimicrobial residue. So this is exactly the issue that we are trying to deal with. Next slide, please. So very naturally that the scientists and the regulators think that we need some sort of thresholds. So remember that I talked about everything can be toxic. So basically that if everything can be toxic at certain level, then where is this certain level exists, right? So this is the MRL, maximum residue limits. And then this is very useful because this number is set for very scientific reasoning with the evidence-based. And then also the dietary exposure estimates are usually put into the consideration as a food consumption for the human. So basically for the food safety, that how much residues can be okay. And then also that there are so much margins, incredible amount of margin, sometimes very unthinkably huge margin added, so that there would be also okay for the vulnerable populations, like very young, babies or very elder people, or somebody who is immunocompromised, any kind of population would be okay to have this threshold. So then also the long-term health impact, even if this person keep eating food with the residue of this amount for long years, but then still not impactful. And then that is the number that experts come up with, and then regulators set up as MRLs. Next slide, please. Then the question is that who does set the MRLs? In theory, that the national authorities are responsible to set MRLs. But then I am not quite sure about your region, the Latin America region, but then I go to many different regions, Asia regions or Africa region, and quite few regions. And then lots of countries, middle and then low income countries, come to me telling me that they don't have resources. They don't have a human capacity or human resources to set every single MRL for all the veterinary drugs. So they usually try to rely on the international standards, for example, the Codex. And then this very project of the ACT project is basically to promote the use of Codex standards. So this is very much in line with the theme of today's webinar. But then we have JECFA Expert Committee. JECFA stands for the Joint Expert Committee for Food Additives and Contaminants. And then this committee is a joint FAO and WHO, and then experts panel discuss this toxicity and then set up the suggested MRL for Codex. And then Codex Alimentarius take up this scientific advice from JECFA and then set up international MRLs. And then countries are very much free to take up these internationally set MRLs to consider for their national MRLs. But then one very critical consideration here is that each national context is different. Some countries are big meat eaters. Some countries have lots of dairy products consumption. Some countries have lots of honey production. Some countries eat lots of fish. So very much different the diversities exist in terms of the exposure. So basically exposure assessment becomes a very important part in setting the MRLs in the national context. But then that's in a nutshell that who sets MRL. Next slide, please. And then traditionally that in the food safety area, that as you can see that there is a green flag and red flag in the slides. So this was the traditional approach that the food safety world was taking, meaning that now that we have MRL and then we check the food for the residue level, and then if it is below MRL, good, green flag, and then no further investigation necessary. If it is above, okay, this is bad because this is exceeding the MRL, so we need to do some risk management options, for example, recalling, and then just communicating with people and then trying to fix the situation so that it goes down to the green flag. So this was the very the binary decision, let's say. So we were really following this for many, many years. And then it was okay in the food safety area. Next slide, please. But then the question comes up, is that enough? And then we have to think about it. That if we do like a green, red, and then doing the binary decisions, that we may miss the hidden patterns. For example, what if that we are finding some drug residues that shouldn't be to be found in a certain commodity? Why this commodity has this drug residue? And then this is a pattern. And then also the next pattern, somehow that this commodity, we keep finding trace amount of residue, although this is below MRL, but then continuously somehow this exists. It's not gonna affect human body for acute or chronic, but then at the same time, still concerning because it is still consistent, right? And then also the geographic clustering. In your country, for example, that in certain region you find like substantial increase of certain drug use. Therefore, there could be a certain residues found quite often. What does it mean? Why this doesn't happen in this part of the country? Or this kind of pattern recognition can be missed. And then also this temporal trend that we may be able to see that this red flag situation at certain time or certain areas, and then at the time that the management is the recalling or stopping the cells and things like that. But then at the same time, if we don't monitor and then document in the long run, that we may miss this kind of trend. And then next slide, please. Yes. Then it comes to this idea of antimicrobial resistance. So connection is not too direct, but then at the same time that this may contribute to the development of resistance, because residue is a small amount, but then still they can be released in the environmental water or soil, like through our human body can be the carrier, the vehicle of this kind of residues. And then we may be spreading this into the environment. And then also that the residues can be, as I said earlier, that can be the indicator of the AMU that the antimicrobial use. So basically that there are lots of synergies between the residue monitoring and then AMR management. Next slide, please. But then the question here about the regulations, that why we should monitor beyond compliance, right? Because if the regulations are saying that this is the MRL, if it below is okay, above is bad, and then why this cannot be just enough and done. And then it's exactly the same thing that I am trying to capture in the previous slide. But then the important part here is that it's not to punish those food producers who has residues, but more on the responsibility of the government to understand the current situations and the current context of the trend and pattern. So basically that they're not really focusing on enforcement of the regulations, but then rather to have a long-term management strategy. Next slide, please. And then I have been repeating this, but then this can be very good elements to consider the antimicrobial use. I understand from for instance, that certain countries that I remember that I was working with the aquaculture colleagues, and then aquaculture colleagues found some resistance gene in certain aquaculture fish, and then they suspected certain antimicrobial use for the aquaculture. But then when they talked to the farmers, then they said like they never use those antimicrobial drugs. And then we were very confused and then very puzzled about this situation, because it was true that the farmers were not using those antimicrobials. And then we realized that this was really coming from the environment, potentially from water or soil. So if this happens, that we will be able to understand from the residue side and use side and try to think about what is the real root cause of the situation that is creating this AMR situation. So I think that this is like a missing piece of the puzzle that we need to put together as a One Health paradigm, and then try to have a more coherent way of managing AMR and food safety together. Next slide, please. So like I said, this is about human health. Food safety has been focusing on human health very much. And then animal health, of course, that the FAO does work a lot on animal health, and then this animal disease, and then medicine use, and then AMU and AMR all together is usual two elements. But then again, here that we need to think about the environmental health, and then also the policy integration in all areas like public health, the food and agriculture, and then environment, and then everything needs to come together so that we will be able to put together this connection and then, connect the dots each other. And then even it's not only about animal health. I mean, some fruit trees use fungicide, which is antimicrobials. And so basically the forestry and the plant health, everything may have very key roles in this One Health connection. Next slide, please. So the idea is that lots of countries came to FAO that how can we build effective monitoring system, but then it's saying it is easy. And then I'm very impressed at the very earlier poll that many countries already have a monitoring system, and then kudos to those countries that have established one. But then usually even my own country, Japan, who is quite advanced, but then they always tell me that how difficult it is to do the active monitoring, meaning that sampling the food without suspicion of anything and then routinely testing for the residue is not something that is very cost effective, let's say, because you don't think there is a problem, and then just to check so that this regular monitoring can continue. And then this is sometimes considered as a luxury. And then this is very complex system because you need human resources, and you need a very good laboratory systems, and then you need to have some sort of a management system as a whole for different commodity, different cross-sectoral issues for the residues. Next slide, please.
Sami, we have 5 minutes.
Okay. And then the common misconception exists that when we try to help the country to build the capacity, that they say that this capacity building process is performance evaluation. So we say that this is not about evaluation or audit, but then basically to understand where this monitoring system could be potentially very effective. And second, next slide, please. The next misconception that usually I receive when I talk about the capacity development is like usually people do think it is only about laboratory capacity. I would say that laboratory capacity is important, yes, and then it's key because this is the main scientific tool to rely on the residue monitoring. But then I realized that if everybody in the government system in this One Health paradigm, and then people do not realize how important it is to do this continuous and then active and then long run monitoring, that this laboratory testing only won't continue. So somebody needs to be having some need to keep going. So these are the two elements that we need to consider when we establish or improve the effective monitoring system. Next slide, please. And monitoring system require more than technical capacity. So it's more like visionary understanding of this connection of One Health, understanding of food safety and AMR together. So this is more of the philosophical understanding for the decision makers to have. Next slide, please. And then this is the cycle that I have recognized that first of all, that I would start from the political will. The government has the will to have a very good monitoring system. Therefore, they invest into this system, then resource will be allocated, and then action can be done from the laboratory and the regulators and monitoring and documentation. But then, as you can see, this is a cycle. So where is it that we should start is the question. And then lots of countries, particularly low and middle income countries that I work with, they usually don't have a very strong political will. Therefore, they cannot invest, and then therefore resources not allocated. Then consequences that we cannot take actions. And then this is very much of the vicious cycle. So we usually start suggesting that we do have to raise the awareness by sharing the data. I know that it is very difficult, but it's somewhere between action and political will, that something that is something punchy action needs to happen so that the political will grow. So this is the hard part of the capacity development. Next slide, please. And it's not always translated into the sustained system, because sometimes there is a project and the people will be able to start, but then when the project ends, that it doesn't continue. So this is quite concerning. So we do need to think about what is it that we try to make it more long-term strategy, and then try to have a segment-wise improvement. Next slide, please. Therefore, finally, that I can introduce that we have a tool, and it's called RVDF. It is standing for Residues of Veterinary Drugs in Foods. This is straight coming from Codex terminology, because we have a Codex committee of RVDF, so CCRVDF. So we use this terminology to create this capacity assessment tool, which is the system-based approach. Next slide, please. And it has all the methodology, guidance, checklist, template, action planning, support. It's all in it. Next one. And this tool very systematically explore the legal framework, sampling protocols, interagency coordination, data management, and data consolidation all together. Next slide, please. I think we went through it. Next one, please. Next one. Yes. So this is the how it works. I think that it is better that I skip this and then just talk about the cases. Next one. So we have piloted this tool in 4 different countries, as you can imagine: Singapore, Thailand, the Philippines, basically 5 countries. Oh, more, the Pakistan and Ghana and Laos. As you can imagine, that the first one is very much advanced country. Second one, more or less quite advanced. And then the third group is middle income. And then the last one is the most the challenging, but then limited capacity and limited resource country. And then we have revised 7 times the tool, because earlier tool was very nice, very comprehensive, but then too sophisticated for most of the low and middle income countries. So in the end, that this year, 2026, we were able to come to this final shape of the tool that can be very useful for countries like Laos. Next slide, please. And so we confirm that it is applicable across all capacity levels. And next one. And then we were able to see the real actionable and the very immediate suggestions come from that is generated automatically from the tool for even the country with the resource constraint setting. So this was a quite big finding that our tool works in the very low income situations. Next slide. And then we were able to tell that what kind of coordinated system, there are quite different versions exist, and then not just doing ad hoc testing and then just writing down that what is above MRL, but then rather that the coordinated system. So this tool generates how to guide the country's monitoring system into the most efficient, most effective, most cost-effective way. Next one, please. And we realized that this is because that we have come up with through this tool that the short-term action items, for example, some pilot, for example, one commodity, few drugs combination of the testing and monitoring pilot program in certain areas of the country so that we'll be able to start having scientific data. Remember this vicious cycle that I was talking about? This data, it can become a wake-up call to the policymakers, and policymakers will be able to start realizing that there could be some actions really necessary. So this tool can generate this kind of starting point. Next slide, please. And this tool is really connecting those two worlds, food safety and AMR, together. So we were finding that this tool is very potentially eye-opening to many people in both livestock and food safety officials. And next one. And then FAO is, of course, that using this tool for support of the AMU related projects. Next one. So these are the take-home messages, but then with you, today's audience, I'll be very happy to share with you the tool. Tool is supposed to be published in 2027. We are very ready. It is still in English only. So I have been talking with the regional office if there is a potential opportunity to translate it into Spanish so that all the people that here can take a look at it and see that if it can be applicable to your countries. And then also that this tool is designed for anyone, not only FAO, but then anyone to be able to use so that they will be able to use the self-assessment or just laboratory assessment or just a module as a part of the AMR related assessment or food safety assessment. So I hope that this presentation gives some sort of ideas and inspiration, and then hopefully that you'll be able to take a look at the tool this year or next year. That feel free to contact me. I think the next slide has my contact information. And then I'll be very happy to answer any questions by email because I am in Tokyo, so it's almost like a midnight. So I will have to log off very soon, but then happy to answer question if you have any. And then I'll be happy to communicate with the organizer today to give the written answers if that is necessary. So thank you very much. And thank you, Maria, for having me here. Thank you for the regional office colleagues here that it has been very pleasure and an honor to be with you. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Masami, for that great presentation. I think we have time for one or two questions. I don't see any questions in the chat, but if you have one, please write it down so I can ask Masami. And maybe if you have any questions in the future, you know that you can contact us regarding this topic or the tool itself. If you have any interest, please let us know so we can guide you in that process. And I'm sure that the countries will be interested, Masami, in this new tool. It's something that it's really important for us as a region. So I hope that we will get many emails asking to know more about the tool and how to apply it in the region. There is one question saying if we can share the presentation. So you, Masami, let me know, and I have it. So perfect, I can share it. Good. Okay, yes, we can share the presentation, and we can also put you in contact with Dr. Masami, so don't worry about it. I don't see any other questions. So Masami, we know that it's really late for you, and if there is anything else, we can contact you and to anything that we might have, any questions or further discussions. So thank you again for joining us and supporting this webinar. So we hope to see you very soon.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Marianne, and everybody. Have a great rest of the webinar. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye. Bueno, entonces, para continuar, como les decía,
to continue, as I was stating, if you have any question, you know us, you know our contacts. For those that wrote to us via chat, we will share the presentation of Dr. Masami's email. We will share it also without any inconvenience. And before we continue, we're going to ask the third question. There are more than 270 people gathered in this webinar, so we're very delighted to hear you, to see that you're here and all the topics that we have been developing. So we have a new question now. According to your knowledge, are there enough laboratory capacity at the national level to analyze priority veterinarian drug residues? Some of them say 40%, 44% says yes, 20% approx says yes, there is capacity, installed capacity, and approximately 20% indicates there's no installed capacity, that samples are sent abroad for analysis, which is the case of many of our nations. The numbers are not moving too much, so we'll leave that. 50 to 55% says yes, with limited capacity, 20% sends it abroad, and approximately 20% says they have installed capacities. So thank you for participating in these questions. We will continue now with our webinar. I would like to introduce Jorgelina Assad. She has a BA in Food Industrial Technology with a specialization in food safety. She currently serves as a general coordinator of residue and contaminant surveillance and alerts, SENASA. She is the representative to Codex Alimentarius in the Committee on Food Contaminants, CCF, and the primary representative of the organization of the National Food Commission. She also has been in Argentina's focal point. I will inform you when you have 20 minutes in your presentation, 5 minutes before you begin. Good morning to all of you. Thank you very much for this invitation. I'm not sure if you can see my presentation, my shared presentation. Yes, very well. Okay. Thank you very much for this invitation. Once again, I would like to share the waste and contaminant control program in Argentina. I will focus on the main challenges that we have had in the last years, because the residue control for animals or all of animal origin has been implemented in Argentina since 1996. On that solid baseline, consolidated with a great deal of information, we have had in the same program the control of vegetable origin products to work in the same line so that it mirrors each other. As the previous it is a whole consideration. We can, if it occurs in one place, we can detect it somewhere else. You can also see it in the results. Firstly, the main target of this program is to protect consumers. It is at the national level, not only for exports, which is one of the questions that was asked at the outset. It is to comply, of course, with the Argentinian rules and regulations. We have standards in the establishment of MRLs. We have contaminants or other contaminants, refers to the Codex Alimentarius of Argentina. We plan the controls based on that baseline. The program collaborates and guarantees to the nations that we trade with. The main characteristic of Argentina, it is an exporting nation of the animal and vegetable industries. And what this did was the need to respond to a diversity of markets. And we have an equivalence in compliance specifically, which is the case of the European Union and the United States. And based on this, it is one of the challenges that we had with the program that we have been involved with. And we focus ourselves in these last 5 years implementing change that was necessary. This is a tool, as has been stated, for decision-making process throughout the food chain. Fast corrective action, surveillance, and also for decision-making to implement restrictions, the use of certain products, and so on. From that standpoint, one of the main challenges is to consolidate and assess all the international requirements, specifically maximum residue levels, the MRLs. Now, therefore, the data that we have today or that occur at a domestic level, it is a tool for decision making. The main objective is to identify the substances or the xenobiotics that are used, and then to understand which are those associated factors. Sometimes it can be a particular occurrence. We have to underline that the Argentinian characteristics, that it is very heterogenic because of the productive sources and locations. There are various sanitary issues in different areas of the country. There are zones that have sanitary programs, and in others, they are exempt of these. Therefore, this is focused on how to manage these situations throughout the nation. Now, other situations that we faced in these last years is to understand the control or reinforce controls in more relevant residues, which are more prevalent also in the use of the country, without leaving aside, obviously, the substances that are important in other destinations. This is why we needed to increase sensitivity, increase surveillance and controls based on risk analysis. And lastly, one of the objectives, and that is our goal, is to reinforce the communication linked to risk. Although the program and the design of this program has existed now for many years, it had a statistic focus, it was random, it had a dynamism where we had the inclusion of substances. We incorporated the risk tool here very quickly. These are the regulations. We comply with Codex at the international level. We have the domestic regulation, the European Union, and the best baseline is Mercosur. And other aspects that I mentioned are these regulations or specific situations that are specific to certain blocks of nations, which we had to update. We had to modify certain situations given these characteristics, and there are different maximum limits to residue which are established or not allowed to enter the country. And given the characteristic as a nation, as an exporting nation, we have to comply with the regulations of all these nations. Therefore, we had to harmonize or try to not, faced with the substance that are necessary and utilize it correctly in the veterinarian drugs, or in the case of in the vegetable world, obviously phytosanitary, food safety products to guarantee to these nations that are our main trade partners. We have different situations, whether we have found situations where there have been auditing, like estradiol in the European Union, in tetracycline in Russia, for example. These are substances that are used, that are necessary for sanitary programs in our country based on our characteristics. Israel had fipronil. It's the same situation. We have a permit to utilize these MRL compared to Israel, for example, Mexico with the organophosphorates. Therefore, we had to modify and observe carrying out a risk analysis. Another challenge we had to face in these last years is the modification of the European Union. The Argentinian program is approved by the European Union in different chains, and we had to harmonize our norms to new substances. There's a specific plan for contaminants, a specific plan for vegetable production and protection, and also other substances based on the new European Union directive. Now, going back to how we design or how our sampling plan works, we have two types of plans, which were called the active plan, which are samples that are done randomly. It depends on the characteristics of the production or the sampling point. We carry this out to have some non-biased sampling, and then the directed sampling, where there is a specific evaluation of a substance or a zone in particular or a location. Then we have a follow-up system that not only alerts our systems through our controls that take place by implementing the national plan. There are other countries, for example, that could be through communications or findings. In Argentina, in the entrance of the merchandise, there is a CREA animal plan. So we have the bovines, different species. We have honey and dairy. Now, we have incorporated prohibited substances, authorized antibiotics by Argentina that can be utilized in different countries, anticoccidians, carbamates, pyrethroids, tranquilizers, antiparasites, mycotoxins, and compounds of organophosphorus, and chemical elements, herbicides, and the termination of PFAS, which are perfluoroalkylate substance in tissues, and the determination of dioxin levels in tissue. So in that which relates to bovine, we have 188 substances that have been researched during the year, just related to bovines. And 34,469 samples. And why am I focusing on bovines? Because I want to give you a risk analysis that was done on this chain. It is done on an annual basis, 11,577 samples. And on one sample, you can analyze one or more substances depending on the area. So based on the new paradigms, based on a non-biased samples that was being done without any randomness that is directed, we carried out a risk analysis. So this improves the sensitivity of these programs with this strategy. We began, as I said, with the bovine chain. Then we went to dairy area. And as of last year, we started working with aviar areas, not only for the exports and the consumption in Argentina, and also in aquaculture for the expansion that it has had in the last years. To carry this out within SENASA, which is a National Institute of Quality Analysis, we are risk managers. Therefore, we knew that a risk analysis had to be done by another organization within the national state. There is CONICET, which participates in all the assessors and evaluators in food security. And we worked therefore jointly with SENASA and on a risk management. We had the participation of national universities and other scientific groups that could be involved in each one of these research processes that are under development. We analyzed more substances that were active. Sometimes we had bottlenecks, the availability of analytic elements, veterinarian backgrounds, or other indicators pharmacologically active. Based on this, we assessed the data that we achieved 10 years backwards, from 2013 to 2023, where we were able, with having geolocalization and all the data that we worked on in each one of the substances that were researched during the last 10 years. We identified locations where the sampling was coming from, the traceability took place. You can see it is a point. The blue point is a sample in which there is a focal point, and this is where there's a highest amount of concentration of animals. What I'm showing you is the assessment of the bovine chain. After this, the next step was to identify a situation where there was a finding or a prevalence of a specific zone or a season of the year. And here we have the phosphorated organophosphorate in Argentina, specific sanitary practices. And also we have a big difference with other countries, such as the United States and Mexico. So on the same path of assessment, we realized there was a focus in which we detected the highest positive results, which, based on our standards, they complied with the national requirements, but not that of the destination trade relation. So you can see here there's a program based on ticks. So we're not only going to see the issues, we have fipronil and other drugs, these substances in 2023. what was the incidence of the appearance of these substances in the different samples that we took. If there was a behavior that was partial in nature or temporal, we assessed whether it was a prevalence of low, medium, and high. Now, all that had high prevalence were identified, as you can see, pyrethroids, cadmium, some metals. And then we reinforce those controls. We increase the controls. And also, if the design and the proposal was random, when we did not find any situation of prevalence, whether spatial or temporal, or if it was spatial, and if there was destination where it required a requirement of prevalence. Observing this, as I'm saying, the characteristics, both of the situation of Argentina in that which relates to different health indications, uses, and behaviors throughout the year, both as a prevalence and then on matters of control.
General planning is going to be done by the number of animals slaughtered the previous year or animals in the production of, in the case of products. They define a minimum percentage of each one of the substances. The samplings in living animals and bovines are also done in living animals for banned substances, but everything related to allowed substances such as antimicrobials, all of that is done in the slaughter. So we have sampling orders where they specify all of the actions that need to be done for the sampling process. Of course, we need to have the analytic availability and of course the assessment as well. One of the things that also matter here is the readaptation of the national standard in terms of the scope of the labs. Business has a central lab, but also it has a network of labs that are official and throughout the country, where they also were updating or improving this analytic availability, and also what were the needs in terms of validation and the types of accreditations that they needed to have. All of that is framed in the new resolution, which is the 1446 from 2024, that updated one from 2006. So based on all of these changes, they redesigned and they looked for what was the best sampling point for each one of the chains. As you can see here, we have from bovine, poultry, pigs, and other animals at the point of slaughter, fish products, eggs, dairy, honey, grains and legumes, vegetables as well. That is what we could comprehend. And they have different forms and applications throughout the year based on the characteristics of production. So in order to reach this, we need to have a system and we need to strengthen the system in order to have a good analysis. So we have been working in the last few years on the digitization and the traceability from the sampling process until the results, the results reports. So these allow to link the predictive unit and have results that are almost in real time of the emission of the analytic protocol. As you can see here, these are different systems that SENASA has and that we're improving in this last year of the record of all of the producers, all of the different links in the chain. Later, the movement of the animal to slaughter, this is the SIPSA, where all of the movements are done through a system, and then they go to an official establishment with an inspection of vets in the case of animal product when the sampling is done. And we also have the production volume that each one have in order to provide the sampling pressure that is also linked to the amounts that are moved for each establishment. And lastly, the certification management systems, which is for experts. All of this is linked to a system for the management of the sampling in a way that we can say this is like a brain that looks at all of these movements and allocates what sampling, taking into account the design that is risk-based. As I was saying, all of these is supported on a system with backend documents and analytic protocol that is issued digitally, and we have that view in real time. So this is a sample.
Jorgelina, perdón, nos quedan
We can
5
have a
minutitos.
link. I'm sorry, we have 5 minutes left. I'm already finishing. So here we can see what is the order and how we're doing the sampling that we can see here in one of the tables. So you can see here we have the official number, it's a response, it's a product, and then we're seeing what type of export it is, if the producer will be exporting or not. So we can do a real-time follow-up, and these are the orders and instructions given to the NASA inspectors, both in field as in the slaughterhouses, and see where the substances to be monitored are assigned. And lastly, what was done in 2024 is to reinforce for destinations for export to those establishments that have a particular destination. For instance, you can see here, it's very small here, what are the establishments that have the EU, what have China, etc., depending on the enabling. They add a treasure based on the substances that we already define as critical for each destination. Later, this is a way for doing the documentation, and this goes to a lab of the network, and then we process so we can have a control of that sample entering the lab, and then they upload the analysis to the system. Here we can assess how the analysis is going on, and we can see the assessment of each establishment and the results. Even though they are in agreement with our standard, we still verify daily all of the results that have been uploaded by each one of the labs in order to conduct that assessment. Later, the corrective actions regarding the standard. So then we start opening what are the actions that we have. So anyways, we are always going to be doing a blocking of the productive unit or the establishment to avoid animals being moved from the farm or without control. And maybe in the face of a finding, any movement from that farm will be surveilled. Then we upload the case, and then we do a field visit. The actions are different in terms of whether there's a finding in a bad substance or whether immediate actions for the assessment and measurement. If there's a contamination in many of the cases, we can have a situation that could give us a possibility of there being endogenous pollution or with mycotoxin. All of that is assessed. And then in the case of whether or not there's a maximum limit or we surpass the national residue limit or we surpass a national limit in the destination country. All of the actions are different depending on that. Of course, always seeing a follow-up from a possible infraction to the producer, so or a fine to the producer. And this is important. This is my final point. For us, we work with the risk assessment and we manage the program through the possible risk. And what we would be missing as a final point that we started working on already is to come with our communications. What would be the communication of risk all the way to the producer? The producer, there we have been doing a survey to the National Academy of Veterinaries, and in many of the cases, they do not know the maximum residue limit or there's an event on a substance. So these are always procedures that need to be known, the producer or whoever carries forth the treatment. But it's very important to always reinforce this. So therefore, this year, we're carrying forth a strategy of communication together from SENASA and the federation that is comprehending all of the Argentina, plus the different chambers, the chambers of producers, the chambers of slaughterhouses, in a way that we can bring the same information or maybe get the same direction in terms of the use of veterinary products. So with the purpose of preventing these situations that we're talking about. So well, until this is the end of my presentation, I hope I was clear. And any question, I am available for you.
Muchísimas gracias,
Thank you very
Jorgelina,
much.
por esa
Thank you very much,
excelente
Jorgelina, for this
presentación.
brilliant
Quisiera repetir
presentation.
lo que mencionabas al final,
And
de
we are left with what you
implementar
mentioned at the end of
evaluación de riesgo,
implementing the risk
comunicación de
assessment,
riesgo para
implementing
orientar
the
hacia
risk
dónde tenemos
communication
que
to
caminar
guide
nuestras acciones
where do we need to go
y
to
el
with our
mensaje llegue
actions.
a todos
So
los
the
actores
message will come
involucrados,
to
¿verdad?
all of the
Así que muchísimas
stakeholders.
gracias.
So thank you so
Vamos a
much.
tener una sesión de preguntas
We're going to have a
al final.
Q&A session at the
Va a dar la
end.
palabra a nuestra
We're
siguiente
going to give the
ponencia,
floor
así
to our
que
next panel
mientras la
member.
presento,
So
vayan
as I
pensando ahí
said,
qué
let's
preguntas
start
tienen
thinking
para
about
Jorgelina
what
o
questions
también
you have
a
for
medida que vayamos
Jorgelina
avanzando
or as we
en la
progress
siguiente
with the
panel.
presentation of our next panel
Y
member.
comentarles que ya
I
somos
would like to
290
tell you that
personas
we're
acá.
290
Muchísimas
people
gracias
already
a
online.
todos
So
por
thank you so much, everyone,
acompañarnos el día de
for
hoy.
joining us today.
Eso no es más que una demostración del gran interés que
That
hay a
just
nivel
shows
regional
the great
sobre
interest that we
este
have
tema.
at a regional level on this
Así
topic.
que, bueno, con eso
So with
vamos
that,
a
we would
presentar
like
a
to introduce
Loida Saraí.
Madam Loida.
Ella es química farmacéutica
She is
biologista.
a
Actualmente
biological
es
pharmacist,
subdirectora
chemical
perdón, de
specialist,
centros de monitoreo
working
analítico
as
y
the Deputy
coordinación de
Director of
alimentos
Analytic
en
Monitoring
parasitología
Services,
animal y
the
tecnología
National
molecular en
Reference
CENAPA de San
Center
Francisco,
in
México.
Animal
La
Parasitology
licenciada es
and Analytic
responsable de la
Technology,
detección y el
CENAPA,
análisis de las
in
muestras del
Mexico.
Programa Nacional
She
de
is
Control
responsible
y
for the
Monitoreo
execution
de
and
Enfermedades
analysis of the
Tóxicas
sample, the
Contaminantes.
National Control Programs and
Así
Monitoring
que
of
dejo
Toxic
con
Waste.
ustedes a
And
Loida.
just so
Loida
I
nos va a
leave with
hablar
now
como saben,
Loida.
unos 25 minutos
As you
de
know, we have
presentación.
25 minutes for your
Le aviso
presentation.
también cuando le
I'd
quede
like to let you
40
know
minutos.
when you have 5 minutes left. Thank you so much.
No la escuchamos.
We can't hear you.
En silencio.
Your microphone is silenced.
Ahora sí. Muchas gracias.
Ahora sí,
I can
¿verdad?
hear now. Yeah, can you hear me now, right?
Bueno, pues muchísimas gracias por la
Thank you so
invitación
much for the
a
invitation
Cenasica y a
to
través de una
Senetica.
sencilla les
And
voy a explicar cómo
I'm
es
going to
con
be
nuestro
explaining
programa
now
nacional.
how is
Es
it
bien
with our
importante
national
la
program. It's very important for us
ya
to have the
que con
participation
todo
given
esto que
that
hemos estado
with
revisando
everything that we have
recientemente,
been
nosotros
checking
podemos
today,
implementar acciones
we can
derivadas
implement
hacia
some
nuestro objetivo
improvement
del
actions
programa
towards our own
en
program
función de apoyar a
based
la
on
sanidad animal,
supporting
seguridad
animal
agroalimentaria y
health
fortalecer las
and
acciones de
food
convención
safety so
en
we
los
can
países.
strengthen the actions of the
Bueno,
convention
yo,
among the
como
countries. So,
mencionan, estoy a cargo
as I was
del
mentioning here, I am
laboratorio
in charge of the
de
lab
residuos
of
tóxicos,
the
que es
toxic
el
waste
laboratorio
analysis.
oficial, el
It's the
Centro
official
Nacional
lab, the
de
National
Referencia en
Center
Parasitología Animal y
of Reference
Tecnología
in
Analítica.
Animal Parasitology and
Y pues
Analytic
bueno, les voy a dar
Technology.
una
And then I'm going to
reseña
be giving
general de
you
cómo ha ido la
a general
evolución
guideline
de
of
nuestro
how
programa nacional.
these national program has been evolving.
¿Me avisan si avanza, por favor?
Can you let me know if you can see my slides moving?
Por el momento no, no avanza.
No, no, we can't see them.
Ok.
There it is.
Bueno,
Okay.
el programa
Well,
nacional
the
fue
national
creado
program
el
was
5 de enero de
created on January 5th,
1984 a través de la
1984.
publicación en el Diario
It's the
Oficial de la
publication of the
Federación de
official
México, en
Gazette of the
donde
Mexican Federation,
se
where
instauraba el programa para
we
control de
install the
basura
program for
tóxicos y
the
productos
toxic waste
originados de
control
origen
in programs
animal
and byproducts
en
from animal
procedimientos de
origin
operación pecuaria o de pomos y establecimientos
productions
de
and
investigación federal.
the federal inspection
Posteriormente,
plan. So
se crea el
later,
SENACICA, que es
we
el
created the
Servicio Nacional
SENASICA,
de Sanidad
which is the National
Pública y
Service
Calidad
of,
Agroalimentaria, el
Food
10 de
Health
julio
and
del año
Safety
2001,
on July
con la finalidad de
2001 with the
fortalecer
purpose of
las acciones de
strengthening
inocuidad.
the food
El
safety
SENACICA tiene a
actions.
cargo
SENASICA
actividades
has
principales el proteger los
under
productos agrícolas,
the
acuícolas
main
y
activity
pecuarios de todas
of
las enfermedades de
protecting
importancia alimentaria,
the
así como
farming products
promover y
of
certificar
all of the
la
pests and
implementación de las
plagues
buenas
and
prácticas
quarantine issues, and also
internacionales
implement good practices in the
para
primary
la reducción de
production
riesgos de
for the
contaminación
reduction
física, química o microbiológica en los
risk
alimentos,
of chemical,
para
physical, or
garantizar la
microbiological pollution in
salubridad
foods in order to guarantee
para el
their
consumo
safety
humano.
for human consumption.
La evolución de nuestro programa
Evolution
nacional
of our national
tiene sus
program
inicios en el año 1970,
began in
cuando se
1970
inició con el
when
monitoreo
we
de
started with
las especies
monitoring
bovino,
of the
porcino y ave,
bovine
con la
pork
finalidad
species
de utilizar
with the
esta
purpose of
a través de
trading all
Estados
of these
Unidos de
products
América.
towards the US.
Posteriormente fueron agregándose
Later, we
otras
started
principales
adding
propiedades
other
de origen animal,
foods,
acuícola y
such as
pecuario, como
animal
también
food aquaculture products, such as handling, shrimp, horse meat, and tilapia, etc. This is open in 2018. Also, rabbits, eggs, and bagres. So these are the products that make up the monitoring from the national program. In 89, sorry, they established an APA as an official lab, and it is recognized by the USDA. And in year 2002, they do a very important equipment and modernization of the official lab, which allowed us to implement more methodologies for increasing the monitoring of the substances that are unauthorized and banned in Mexico. July 2025, the SENAPA, which is the official lab, is 25 years of trajectory, consolidating itself as a key part for animal health and food safety in Mexico. So this lab is located in the municipality of Jitepec, Morelos. It is a state that is very close by to the Mexico City, where they have installed all of the SENASICA offices. The program is coordinated by an internal work group that is made up by 3 general boards, which is the General Direction of Animal Health, the Direction of Epidemiology, those to support us in the risk report and the definition of the sampling size for each one of the species, just like the regulation or establishments of coadjuvants, and they have the control of the registry of drugs and also the produce of the producing establishments as well, and also the labs that are being approved by SENASICA to analyze the samples, especially for import, in terms of toxic waste. Also, we have the participation of the Direction of Import and Exports that regulate the requirements so they can enter products from Mexico, and also the requirement for all of the countries that want to trade with us. The reference lab is the one that is in charge, as I said so, of the monitoring and the analysis of all of the samples of the different programs. We also have the participation of the General Direction of the Inspection of the IF through the Direction of Projects and Innovation Programs of the Quarantine System, Direction of Agri-Food Safety for Aquaculture and Agriculture, which is the DGA, where we regulate the establishments that are like a federal inspection, as well as those farms that are regulated by the ALCO. In this work group, we define the minimum sample size that is going to be analyzed for each program, as well as the analysis of the results of each year that we have been doing. We've been doing these work meetings in a way that is already scheduled through a formal group where we also carry out the risk analysis. Last year, for instance, we made tool that was a bit more formal, so we can carry forward this risk analysis for all of those cases that turn out to be positive towards substances and banned drugs and unauthorized drugs. So this can be considered in the following year in the monitoring. So also in this work group, we established the MRL table and the procedures that will be ruling each one of the stages of the program. And also the criteria functioning of the analytic method, the official lab and the approved lab in terms of toxic waste should follow in the analysis of this product. Additionally, we also have the participation of an interinstitutional work group that is made up by the producers from the good transformation industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the Secretariat of Health, the Environment Secretariat, Natural Resources Secretariat, and some other academic institutions such as the National Autonomous University of Mexico. Within all of our functions, we want to establish the strategies for monitoring, attention, and detection of the non-conforming faults, and also want to propose a risk mitigation scheme in the productive chain. The scope of this program is toward the aquaculture and farming production units or farms that have established good production practices and that are certified for that. And with that, we guarantee that the foods coming from these farms are safe and that they have a control with procedures that are established in the manual for good practices that are as a guide to obtain the certification as established in the federal law for animal health. For the sampling, in the case of honey, shrimp, and tilapia and milk, this is done through the ACO, which is the direction where we provide follow-up to the good production practices in the farming in the farms and also aquaculture farms, and these are administered by the state administration, which are areas that are represented in each one of the states of the country by the SENASICA and also the executing agencies that are also auxiliary bodies from the animal health committees. On the sampling, it's regulated.
Por ejemplo, en la regulación 1647 de la Unión Europea. El tamaño de muestra va a depender del volumen de producción anual, como por ejemplo en el caso de la miel, que estos datos son obtenidos de los servicios de información agroalimentaria y pesquera. También de los números de unidades de producción primaria, estatales y nacionales obtenidos de censos acuícolas. Y también de la presencia de contaminantes como resultado de la ejecución del programa inmediato anterior, del año inmediato anterior. Con el monitoreo, nosotros podemos lograr la exportación hacia nuestros principales destinos, como es en el caso de la leche hacia los Estados Unidos y la miel también hacia los Estados Unidos. En el caso de los productos cárnicos, estos provienen de establecimientos de matanza tipo inspección federal.
From the beef area, we have been working with security and hygiene and guarantee the traceability of animals. There are specific regulations at the domestic level for the compliance that these different areas should comply with, and the humanitarian slaughtering of animals and the operation in its facilities on products such as these. We also have the different egg producing farms. Now, products that come from the DTIF centers, we standardize the minimum sampling, which is reported to the supervisors and the official lab in order to ensure that the official lab in both inputs the amount of samples that need to be analyzed. Then the central office must follow up on the results, and the official veterinarians in following up the samples that have not complied with the results. The supervisors of these institutions has to report to the veterinarian with the results and carry out a follow-up in detecting these non-compliance. They are in charge of taking the samples and sending it to the lab. When we find results that are beyond the maximum residue levels or with prohibited substances, we follow up on the traceability of the samples, and the all labs should comply with action plans in that which relates to the scope of what has been found. The TIF institutions have to ensure that the compliance with MRLs is found authorized for export. There are 2 samples that are taken in these locations, a primary and a witness, and it's taken of the fat the liver, the
En
muscle,
cuanto a los
and are
informes de
sent to labs. As
cualificación,
far
las
as
autoridades de
volumes
inspección federal,
of these
los principales
inspections,
destinos en
the
el caso
main
de ovinos
destinations
es
in the
Estados Unidos
case
de
of
América, en
beef
el caso de porcino Japón,
is the
y
United
la
States,
combinación de
pork is
alimentos
Japan,
o alimentos
and a
preparados a base de bovino,
combination of
porcino y aves
products that
aquí
are
en Estados
used
Unidos.
with a
Así como
bovine,
Guatemala
porcine,
para la
and
especialidad,
aviar are mainly
para la
are
especie
combined that are also
equina
sent to the
y
United
productos
States.
hacia Cuba,
Equine
Argentino y
is
ovino, el principal destino
for
es
Japan,
Estados Unidos.
and the United States
También en el caso de
takes
los
the
productos de
other areas
importación,
also.
los
As
cuales
far as
pasan por
exports are
la nueva
concerned,
licencia de comercio,
which
estos son
enters
enviados a
the
los laboratorios
unique
aprobados
trade
y se hace
window.
una
These
distribución
are
de los
approved,
análisis
and
de
there
las
is a
moléculas que se
distribution
deben
of the
monitorear,
analysis and molecules that
de
need
tal
to be
manera que se pueda garantizar
monitored
también
to
la inocuidad de los
ensure
productos que ingresan
that
al
there
país.
is food
Principales
safety
destinos
in all
de
the
ingreso de productos son
destinations of these products.
de origen de productos que ingresan a
Of
México son los
products that
Estados Unidos de
enter
América,
Mexico are
Brasil
from
y Canadá,
the United
para
States
las
of
especies de
America, Brazil, and
avícola,
Canada.
bovino y ovino.
For porcine,
En
aviar,
cuanto a la
bovine,
regulación
and
de nuestro
ovine,
programa
or
nacional,
sheep.
el artículo
Now, as far
162
as
de
the
la Ley Federal de
national
Inspección Federal
regulation,
establece que
Article
existe una importante
162
programa
establishes
oficial.
that there
En el
has to be an
año
official
2022 se
program in
estableció en
2022.
la última versión del
The
acuerdo a través
last
del cual se
version of the
definen los niveles
agreement
máximos de
where
residuos
there is a
tolerables,
maximum
el funcionamiento de
of
los centros analíticos,
residue level
el
tolerated
desarrollo del programa
as far as
específico de
toxins
mitigación
and
de contaminación
contaminants.
y un módulo de consulta
And there is
en
a
el cual se
module
reporta
for
por escrito
consultation where we have
estos
all the
procedimientos
information uploaded
y la
as
información
far
que
as the
está relacionada
procedures and
con el
data
programa
and
oficial de
regulations
Senaciet.
linked to official programs of the
En cuanto a
Senacid
la tabla límite de máximo de
webpage.
residuos,
Now, as
hay una
far
tabla
as
en México que
the
tiene su base en el
MRL
Codex Alimentarius
table,
para
we are in the
servicios
Codex
alimentarios
Alimentarius, both
veterinarios
for
como para
for drugs,
insecticidas.
veterinarian
Y
drugs, and
obviamente también se considera
pesticides
el Departamento de
and
Agricultura de los
plaguicides.
Estados Unidos, puesto que
In agreement with the United States,
al igual
which is one of the
el
most
reglamento
important
desde
trade
2010 de
partners
la Comisión
in
Europea.
2010 of the
Entonces también
European
están
Union,
establecidos los límites
the
máximos de residuos
maximum
para el
residue
comercio
were
con la Unión
established
Europea.
when
Entonces,
trading with the
en el caso, por
European
ejemplo, de la
Union.
miel y
So
productos
in the case
acuícolas,
of honey
nosotros
and
consideramos
aquaculture
también
products,
los límites
we also
establecidos
implement
por la
the
Unión Europea
limitations that are
como
established by
medida
UE
en cuanto a la exportación también.
as far as exports of these products.
Adicionalmente, México cuenta con un
In
acuerdo
addition,
en
Mexico
el
has
marco
an
de intercambio de
agreement
sustancias o
which
productos
has a
prohibidos
list
o consumo de
of
animales,
forbidden
incluidos
substances
para el abasto.
for animal
Estas son 32
consumption.
moléculas,
These are
las cuales se
32
deben de monitorear
molecules
dentro de
which
los
must
productos
be
que están dentro del
monitored
programa
amongst the products that
como
are in the
sustancias prohibidas,
program
entre ellos el
as
clorhidrato de clorpromazol,
forbidden substances.
cloramphenicol, algunas
The
especies de antiparasitarios
clenbuterol,
y
colhydrate, and
algunos
clenbuterol, and
medicamentos
other
que están
veterinarian
prohibidos tanto
drugs
en
that are
México
forbidden
y
in
de manera
Mexico
internacional.
and at the
En
international
cuanto a los criterios de
level.
funcionamiento de métodos
As
analíticos
far as
que
the
son utilizados en el
criteria
laboratorio
for analytical
para el monitoreo de
methods
todas las sustancias,
for
nuestra
monitoring
base
and screening
es
all
el
the
reglamento de la
substances
Comunidad Europea
is the
988,
UE
donde se establece cuáles deben de
808,
ser los
which
criterios para
establishes
cada uno de los
the
métodos que
criteria
deben ser
for each
utilizados
method
en el análisis de estos productos.
in the
Nuestro sistema
analysis
de
of these
funcionamiento
products.
consta de varias partes
This
enumeradas con los
responds to
criterios de
various
funcionamiento para los
areas
métodos
that which
preventivos como es la
relates to
ELISA,
the
los métodos de
presumptive
cromatografía, los métodos de y
chromatographies,
los métodos de espectrometría
which are
combinados con
combined
gases y cromatas,
spectrometry
así como la
with
aseguración de
different
la calidad
gases
para los métodos
in
analíticos,
analyzing
la
the
interpretación de los
quality,
resultados,
the
el análisis
interpretation
de
of the
tendencias,
results,
que viene
the
siendo el
analysis
trend
of
control,
trends, which are
las
control
pruebas de desempeño que
graphs,
se deben realizar
the
para poder
different
comprobar la competencia
compliance
comercial de los
levels to
laboratorios,
ensure
realizando
the
financiamiento
competencies of
tanto
the
el oficial
labs,
como lo
both at
externo.
the official
Y todos los
level and
criterios están
additional ones.
para
and all the criteria that needs to be considered for assessment, chemical methods, and the validation of different enzymes as ELISAs. This methodology identifies a criteria when we want to broaden it to a different molecule. Sorry, next. So as far as the work carried out by the lab, we are a lab that works with chemical, pharmaceutical, and food products with active principles for animal use, with the observance of being recorded in SADR for later trade. We are a diagnostic laboratory. We also, as epidemiological surveyors, we are also providers of aptitude assays or testing, which coordinate amongst laboratories the assays of directed aptitudes of these labs with to ensure that the results provided are accurate. We also carry out the biological material production. So we have strains of ticks. We create antigens and serum of different types. These are different types of lines that our official labs work in. The participation of these programs, we have residue, toxic residue, and animal and aquaculture and fishing programs, monitoring. We have pathogen reducing programs. We, as E. coli and Salmonella, we also have reliable supplier program, which is linked to production specifically. We take urine samples in live animals, which are analyzed through the ELISA program and through electro to prevent that this forbidden substance is present. We also carry out dioxins and furanes, and also to avoid food fraud, amongst other aspects. You have 5 minutes. Thank you. Now, as far as sample traceability, we have the laboratory development in the year 2008, and one of the achievements in 2025, if we were able to incorporate the sampling module, we only had from the reception sample record and background. We had the register of results and the emission. Today, the system has a module for sampling process where official veterinarians analyze the product and add all the details of the sample sent to the lab. And this allows us to avoid issues that we had in the past. We had a traceability format and we had to enter this information into the system. And now, because it's incorporated, we no longer have to carry out a double information reception or entrance to ensure, and thanks to this, we have a traceability that is complete, which can be reviewed by the program coordinators to ensure that follow-up is carried out to the, particularly to the results that go beyond the MRLs. Samples are received in SENAPA with a conformity code. It has to have a traceability format. They have to be adequately received, that the matrix upon which they are carrying out, and that the size of the sample is sufficient and that it is kept in the cold chain. We have to ensure that it is completely sealed, that there is no symbols or ideas of violating the sample, and that it has to be analyzed by the receiving party. Once all the information is obtained, we carry out the sampling. We take a portion, which is reduced to 250 grams. We have to wash all the utensils in each process to avoid cross contamination. It is very well established and it is carried out by sampling experts. It is put into a plastic recipient, which has a unique key, which is established by a law that establishes the technical competency of lab. We comply with this to ensure confidentiality, since we are not indicating who the analysis is carried out by. Only the official and authorized staff have access to this information. We have equipment with liquid and gas chromatography to carry out the analysis. The analytic process has to have 10 days for the issuance of the results. And one of the achievements we have also attained at this lab in 2025, we began the implementation of more multi-residual method, which we started working with in 2008. But we increased the amount of molecules of various families, which are monitored in various products. And we are able to optimize the analysis. These are monitored, all these different families, which are clearly identified in the consultation monitor, in the analytical processes. Here you can see the different families that are analyzed and the compounds. With multi-residual analysis, we were able to extend the amount of molecules analyzed. Today, we are carrying out an analysis of 187 vis-a-vis 2022, when we only analyzed 139 molecules. The staff is highly trained. We have approximately 90 public servants. They have been working at this center for a great deal of time. They are advisors of the National Evaluation of Mexico, and they are capable of working only in these very specific laboratories. We carry out a validation of the analytic methods, and you can see that they are considering 4 steps: implementation, validation, statistical analysis, and final report. We have a specific department. We also have a metrologic verification survey area, which have to do with measurements of traceability for international organization for the mass, volume, and temperature and frequency, etc. We also use certified reference material to ensure the quality of the results and quantify. And we use these materials, which must comply with the standard 2124 and 2125 when they're going to be used in specific laboratories. Now, as far as aptitude essays, There are different scopes, coloring, ivermectines. We have a specific pesticide aptitude analysis for honey and other areas. I was mentioning that the center is a supplier for different types of trials. And this is a link to different countries, and Latin America have asked for the participation of these trials. We are a center for training also. So, in all the activities that SENAPA carries out, analytical methods, quality management systems, quality assurance, validation methods, metrology, traceability, aptitude, trials, and international technical exchange events. Now, another aspect that this organization has achieved, it has recognitions in aptitude, trials, and analysis and reports, and in the norm as the supplier of aptitude trials and reports. And we are also recognized by United Nations, FAO, as a reference laboratory for Central America and the Caribbean for the diagnosis of anti-parasite resistance and an emphasis on ticks. In Context and Evolution, the first text was 2014. This is when I mentioned that there had to be a national program, although we had been working on it for many years. And this agreement was updated in 2022, which is the one we utilize now. The scope is monitoring toxic residues in agricultural, food and agriculture at the national and export level, monitoring products of carnic origin. For the imports, the main achievements are the follow-ups and the establishment of preventive and corrective actions. The challenges are strengthening the traceability, digitation of these products, strengthen research with academic institutions for the insurance of identifying toxic products, and the lessons and recommendations to strengthen communication and strengthen trade agreements amongst countries to comply with the matters of toxic materials or residue. Thank you very much. I hope it was useful, and I hope that you find that this information has been useful to you. Thank you very much for your presentation and for showing us all the tools and the scope that this lab has. It is quite impressive how it has advanced. We have some questions for both. So I will mention the ones in the chat. We have a few minutes, but there were some doubts about the presentation of Masami. There's a question about confidentiality. It is loyal to maintaining the confidentiality of all nations. There's no inconvenience there. So use this tool with complete trust. As Masami was saying, it will be published next year. but in any case,
conocer la mayor profundidad y tener
you
una
can
profundidad.
learn the benefits of this tool by writing to Masami directly. And also allow us to help you. Please copy Leopoldo and myself. I will write all the emails on the chat. Just to respond to some of the questions that have appeared, one of them is if in South America there is a lab that carries out antibiotic residues. Who knows how to answer this?
Sí, quizás Leo también puedas conocer algo por ahí. ¿No? Nos queda, entonces estaría pendiente. Vamos a ir a hacer las averiguaciones a ver cómo podemos responder a esa pregunta. Tenemos aquí una pregunta de María Elena que dice, las muestras se van a varios laboratorios y no son necesariamente oficiales, son particulares. ¿Quién paga esos análisis? Creo que esta pregunta fue durante la sesión de Jorgelina.
Sí, en el caso de Argentina contamos con el laboratorio oficial de SENASA, que es el central, y hay una red de laboratorios, ¿sí?, autorizados para emitir protocolos analíticos, análisis oficiales. El muestreo es oficial a cargo de inspectores de SENASA y el análisis puede hacerse o según la capacidad analítica en nuestro laboratorio o en laboratorios dentro de la red, que para estar dentro de la red de SENASA necesitan cumplir con una serie eh, de presentaciones donde lo básico es que tienen que tener ISO 17025 y algunas acreditaciones de los rubros. Son privados en algunos casos, en otros casos son mixtos. Por ahí, por ejemplo, hay un caso en el cual es de una provincia, ¿sí? También es provincial o de un organismo técnico también de Argentina. Y también otra de las preguntas, y creo que estaba relacionado, es quién abona el costo de estos servicios de análisis. En parte, SENASA lleva adelante el muestreo y el análisis en sí, eso es todo a cargo de SENASA, y en algunas situaciones, como exportación o muestreos de importación, es el exportador o el importador según el caso. Pero siempre la garantía, el muestreo y la trazabilidad y todo la confidencialidad de los datos, la trazabilidad, es garantía SENASA.
Perfecto, muchas gracias, Jorgelina. Aquí veo que algunos de nuestros participantes dicen que respecto a la pregunta anterior, se puede preguntar en Costa Rica, en el SICA de la UCR. Así que ahí tienen un dato para el tema de residuos de antibióticos. Otra pregunta que tenemos acá hace referencia a la presentación de Loida y preguntan si en México las buenas prácticas pecuarias y acuícolas son obligatorias para productos destinados a consumo interno provenientes del alcance del programa de monitoreo de residuos.
Al día de hoy, lo que está completamente bajo control es hacia productos de exportación y sí se está haciendo promoción para que todas las unidades de producción estén trabajando sobre buenas prácticas. El SENACICA realiza difusión continua hacia todas esas unidades de producción para que se afilen y se puedan certificar en su totalidad.
Perfecto, muchas gracias. Y creo que podemos abordar solo una pregunta más que dice, ¿cómo han abordado, perdón, el monitoreo de hormonas esteroides, entendiendo que algunas de estas son producidas de forma endógena? Como por ejemplo, cómo se determina un límite máximo permitido.
Bueno, no sé si contesto yo, si querés, María.
Sí,
Bien.
adelante.
No, una de las situaciones al final de mi presentación les comentaba cuáles eran las acciones, ¿no?, que se hacían depende el hallazgo, que es puntual, y con esto, con las herramientas informáticas que hoy tenemos y que los resultados están online, puede focalizarse la acción posterior en función de este hallazgo. Y una de las situaciones es esta: ante situaciones que podrían llevar a una confusión, o sea, o el mal uso o el uso de una sustancia prohibida o que sea endógena, esto nosotros hacemos una investigación a campo de relevamiento, de identificación, al tener la trazabilidad en el caso del animal, qué tipo de animal y si podría haber una interferencia. Esto, si bien para nosotros lo tomamos como un desvío, a nosotros en Argentina lo llamamos un exceso, después se hace esta evaluación, ¿sí? Cuáles podrían ser las diferentes situaciones. Por lo menos nosotros lo estamos tratando ahora sí.
Perfecto, muchas gracias. Loida, si usted quisiera complementar o...
Sí, sí, en el caso igual de México, hemos conformado hasta un grupo de trabajo justo para analizar estos casos, debido a que justamente no podemos definir si es debido a que es la sustancia endógena o por aplicación hacia estos animales. Entonces, el año anterior, a través del grupo de trabajo de residuos tóxicos, se conformó justo pues dado que se detectaron algunos casos con la presencia de la epitestosterona, y bueno, se ha llevado a nivel de análisis de riesgo y se hizo una evaluación en campo, una investigación en campo para poder determinar el origen, pero sí, igualmente estamos trabajando para poder definir, dado que no hay, no encontramos en algún lugar del mundo ningún establecido un límite máximo de residuos. Y yo creo que es uno de los temas sobre los cuales se tiene que trabajar.
Perfecto, muchísimas gracias. Ya estamos sobre el tiempo, pero de igual forma quisiéramos hacerle 2 preguntas más a la audiencia, así que si nos regalan unos minutitos más, voy a lanzar 2 preguntas que no quisiéramos que queden en el tintero. Vamos con la cuarta pregunta, que dice: según su conocimiento, ¿considera usted que el Programa Nacional de Control de Residuos está basado en riesgo? Ahí si nos ayudan. Damos unos segunditos antes de pasar a la otra. Sabemos que están todos con muchas actividades, pero ya comenzamos a ver algunos datos. Cerca de un 40% más o menos dice que sí, porque el plan de muestreo está avanzado en perfiles de riesgo y porque las sustancias de medicamento están priorizadas en base al riesgo. Cerca de un 25% más o menos dice que sí a la primera opción, porque el plan de muestreo está basado en perfiles de riesgo. Y un 15 más o menos sí, porque las sustancias de medicamentos están priorizadas en base al riesgo. Un 25% no sabe cómo está la situación nacional. Perfecto, entonces ahí los números dejaron de moverse. Pasamos a la siguiente. La última pregunta. Dice: según su conocimiento, el Programa Nacional de Control de Residuos está liderado por la Autoridad Sanitaria del Ministerio de Agricultura, la Autoridad Sanitaria del Ministerio de Salud o sector privado o academia. Ahí vemos rápidamente que la mayoría está centrado en la Autoridad Sanitaria del Ministerio de Agricultura, cerca de un 75%, más o menos sube ahora un 80% prácticamente, y un 20% en el Ministerio de Salud. Más o menos esas son las métricas. Perfecto. Muchísimas gracias. Bueno, y con eso agradecemos a nuestras panelistas, a nuestras 3 panelistas el día de hoy. Gracias por compartir sus conocimientos, sus experiencias nacionales, que sin duda ayudan a toda la región en continuar el trabajo, en este caso, de residuos de medicamentos veterinarios. Les recordamos a todos que tanto esta sesión como sesiones anteriores las pueden revisar en la página web de la serie de webinarios que acabamos de compartir en el chat. Si tienen cualquier inquietud, por favor pónganse en contacto con nosotros. También les compartimos nuestros correos y felices de poder brindar apoyo. Y bueno, nos encontramos en una siguiente sesión el día 20 de mayo, así que desde ya los dejo a todos invitados. Pronto van a estar viendo la difusión de nuestro próximo evento. Así que nada más que agradecerles a todos nuestros panelistas, participantes y por supuesto a nuestro equipo de interpretación. Mil gracias a todos. Nos encontramos en una próxima oportunidad. Que estén muy bien.